Hello, Saltines. I am back with another episode of Esoterica by the Salty Witches podcast by Cat and Cauldron. That's a lot. Um, this episode of Esoterica is going to be a little bit different. We, to my knowledge, didn't get any questions on this week's regular episode. If you did submit questions, trust that we did get those. Austin just has not shared those with me yet. Okay. So we'll get those addressed on the next episode of Esoterica. Um, anyway, but one of the reasons for that most likely is that we didn't actually record a regular episode, or one of our normal, whatever that means, one of our regular or our common, usual episodes this week. Most of you who tune into the podcast, are aware that this week was a particularly difficult one for us here in the US, for a good number of us here in the US. And I think a lot of us were processing, a lot of us were really kind of caught up in our feels this week, and just disappointment and betrayal and anger and fear, a lot of fear. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the fear that is being expressed by so many people, because the fear is palpable and understandable. And it doesn't matter if you are a woman, it doesn't matter if you are a trans person, it does not matter if you are any other member of the LGBTQ plus QIA plus community, a person of color, a neurodivergent person, a person with disabilities. It does not matter if you are anyone who is a marginalized, disenfranchised, someone who with the society that we live in on average has been disempowered in some capacity. Um, and you're feeling fearful about what is kind of going on politically in the US. Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Like, yeah. Um, so I just, I want to talk about that fear though a little bit, because we're in an interesting position as spiritual practitioners when we consider how fear holds power over us in our lives and the way that we pursue spiritual practice. Fear, like most other emotions, you hopefully some of you will understand is an energy form, and and I want to remind all of you who find yourselves feeling fearful, understandably, absolutely, and I want to remind you all that your feelings are valid, and and I'm right there with you. But we do need to remember that we cannot allow fear to control us. If we give over to fear, the next 4 years are going to be even worse for us. Um, everything that happens that we are fearful of happening will be 10 times worse than it really is, because we will have lived for that moment long before it really arrives. We owe ourselves better. So, so I want to talk about fear and remind us, all of you, myself as well, that, that while it is natural, that we need to be very mindful of how we allow fear to control us, particularly again when it comes to our spiritual work. Fear is one of the few emotions. Fear is one of the few emotional states, or one of the states of being that we can kind of sit in as humans, that can short circuit our power, that can shut us down quicker than anything else. Um, and I know a lot of us right now, because of the positions that we're in, the feelings of desperation, the anger, the hurt, right? Again, justified anger and hurt. A lot of us right now are coming up with plans for how we want to motivate against what we are already perceiving to be will be the attacks against our identity in our lives, right? And that means not only in mundane ways, but certainly also spiritually, magically, energetically. And I think it's important for us to remember that it is going to be difficult for us to be able to organize our thoughts. It is going to be difficult for us to be able to formulate and to assemble effective spells, and effective processes of manifestation if we are approaching those things from a fear state. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're able to, to tuck that aside or to at least honor and acknowledge that emotion, but not allow it to control us to the extent that it is really hindering us in our lives and in our practice. So I wanted to talk about that very briefly because it is a tricky thing, fear, right? It's necessary, right? Fear is a state of being. Fear is an emotional state that has allowed us as creatures, living creatures, to survive, for the amount of time that we've been around, humanity. If we had no concept of fear, we would not have survived those first few millennia. We would have we would have walked up to the predators that would have chosen to attack us or eat us, right? We would have eaten the poisonous plants. We would have done the stupid things that probably would have spelled our doom. That probably would have been responsible for the termination of our species, right? So fear can be a mechanism for survival. Right. And I think it's good that we look at it as such, particularly in moments like this, in times like this, you know, um, we all need to utilize our fear now or recognize it as a mechanism for survival as we navigate what many of us are anticipating is coming over the course of the next 4 years, and potentially even after the next 4 years. Um, yeah. So I wanted to talk about that just very briefly. To the rest of you, or not to the rest of you, but to change the subject a bit. Again, you can see like this week has been difficult for me. I have not slept well at all this week. There's just been I think a lot going on, just mentally, emotionally for so many of us, and my brain is a little fuzzy today. Probably not the day to be trying to do this, right? But we, kind of promised you we'd be putting these out, so I want to make sure we make good on that. Um, anyway, to talk about something or to maybe address something else, I also want to talk to all of you who maybe are feeling, a sense of betrayal and disappointment at your own spiritual practices, at your own belief, at your own spiritual allies. There are moments that we go through in our lives, I think, where we go through processes. We experience a loss of faith. We experience a loss of faith when we are, we have something that happens, and particularly when we have we've prayed, we've done spell work, we've whatever we've done, right, to ensure that something doesn't happen, and then that thing happens, right? And it can be very upsetting. And I think that in those moments, because we just don't know what else to do, and there just doesn't seem to be another way to be able to logic or to rationalize why did this still happen, right? We can, I think, sometimes turn against our own belief and our own faith, and we can turn against our spirits. And I absolutely understand. And if you're in that situation right now, I hear you. I hear you. I've had that moment. I've been there. Um, and all I can really say to that is obviously, you handle that however you need to. Um, but I know that this particular situation, with as difficult as this is, with as potentially terrible as the next 4 years could be for many of us here in the US. And I want to be really careful with how I say this because I don't want to come across as a toxic positivity kind of a person. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while now, that's not me. I'm not one of these toxic positivity kinds of people. I'm not a let's just ignore it, it'll go away kind of personality, right? And so that's not it, right? I firmly acknowledge that the next 4 years are going to be very difficult, and that if we're going to survive and we're going to be able to come out at the end of that 4 years with anything close to what we acknowledge as a happy life, we're going to need to support each other. We're going to need to rally together, and we're going to need to have each other's backs. And that means that we're going to need to be prepared to face challenges and potentially even need to be prepared to face dangerous moments. Because if we're truly allies and we're truly in support of each other, that doesn't mean that can't just be in moments where it's convenient or safe. right? If you're in a moment where you are someone who considers yourself an ally, but you're on a public bus, and this happens. I mean, this is a story that's a really common one I hear from friends of mine who are people of color, right? Where you're someone that even went so far as to march in the Black Lives Matter protests and things a few years back, right? And just to mention that issue is not over. That issue is not over. And in fact, the next 4 years, that's going to probably be getting even worse than it still is. Um, but there are a lot of people, well-intentioned and well-meaning, white people, and not to pick on the whites, not to pick on the white people, because we need all of you. We need all of you. We all need to work together, right? We all need to work together, right? We're not picking fights with our allies, okay? But I do think it's fair for us to look very closely at the concept of allyship and what that really means, and how committed you really are to your allyship if you claim to be one. Is a very common scenario of people who will go even to the extent of marching in something like BLM protests, and then they find themselves in a moment where they're on like a public transport, like a bus, a subway or something, and there will be, a black woman sitting on the seat across the aisle, and that black woman will be accosted by some neo-Nazi asshole who will be up in her face, calling her all kinds of horrific stuff, dropping the N-word, saying all kinds of terrible things to this person. And in that moment, that white person who marched in those BLM protests, those will freeze. They freeze in that moment, and because they don't want to get involved, and they're afraid. They're afraid. And fear is absolutely a normal response in a situation like that. I think anybody, unless you have a serious mental problem, you're going to experience some sort of fear in a confrontational moment like that. Um, but in that moment you freeze, and in that moment you unfortunately, you have not only have you failed that woman who is being accosted by that racist piece of shit, but you have, in essence, you have canceled out all of the effort that you have taken to be an ally. Yeah, because that was the moment where you really needed to be an ally and you weren't. And like I said, and that's tricky. And we're all human, and we all have those moments where we kind of fail, we drop the ball, right? So I'm not speaking now in a position of judgment. Okay, I know we're all human, and we all screw it up. But that is an example of, I think, of situations that maybe many of us could find ourselves in the coming years, where if we are in allyship, if we are someone who is like, I want to make sure that I continue to support these people who I know are really kind of in the sights of these problematic organizations, this problematic government, these problematic leaders, like you're going to have to be willing to step outside of your safe zone and really, really show up. It's how we it's how we earn community, in addition to how we continue to be a good ally. So there's one other thing that I wanted to maybe just talk about a little bit. Um, anyway, um, I had another point I was going to try to make in the process of all of that, and it's completely gone now. Again, I'm sorry, my brain is fuzzy today. Um, Overworked and underslept, right? Probably like just like the rest of you. Um, I wanted to get on here today and actually share some practical information. And I find that in the process of trying to organize a little bit, in the process of trying to empower people to potentially fight against some of the trouble that maybe we anticipate is coming up, right? And I just want to clarify right now, like, don't wait. Don't wait. I think a lot of people tend to be reactive in situations where, they're looking at the potential for trouble, and I think it's always better, here's just like kind of like another analogy, right? If you're dealing with, a situation like, say you're camping, you're out in the wilds, right? And a rattlesnake, slithers into your tent, right? And is coiled in a corner and is ready to spring and to bite someone and poison someone potentially, envenomate someone, right? Um, that's not the moment to be reactive, right? That's not the moment to wait until the snake has uncoiled and has bitten, right, someone and has poisoned someone, right? That is not a moment to be reactive, right? And right now, with the current the new presidential administration that will be coming into power in the next couple of months, we are dealing with a coiled rattlesnake. It has already made its intention known. It has already made it quite clear, like we have a list of people that we are just waiting to bite, right? And so we don't want to be reactive in times like this. We need to be proactive. We need to start taking action before that snake has even had a chance, really, to crawl into the tent, right? And it's too late. The snake's already in the tent, right? The snake and unfortunately, so many people who support the snake, they've been in the tent for as long as the tent has been around, sadly. But we do have the power now to do something before the snake can bite, right? Or before it can start biting. And so, with the information I'm going to share today, I want you to not wait. We have this very interesting period of time between now and January of 2025 where some other possible things could occur, right? And I'm not necessarily advocating any particular type of action. I'm not telling you what you should do with your practice and your power. You are all sovereign beings, and you are all operating within your own agency, right? But I think that it would be unfortunate if those of us who are extremely unhappy about how things are going right now, and those of us who are very concerned about the way things look like they are headed, um, don't take any action. I think that it would be very unfortunate for us to kind of just sit on our hands and just kind of just play a let's just wait and see how it goes kind of game, right? We all know that the let's just wait and see how it goes approach did not work out very well for the people of Germany during World War II and the rise and the influence of the Third Reich, right? Didn't work out so well for them, right? Um, anyway, let's dive in. Right. So, and I will say, I had a moment of hesitation at the thought of sharing this information because I, I get a little nervous about sharing practical baneful magic in such a public format. But I just, again, the internet being what it is, there are so many other sources for this information out there. It's not as if I'm really and it's not as if I'm really giving you something that you couldn't potentially find somewhere else. At least the type of work that this is. But I will say these are specific spells. We're going to go through three. Two of them are baneful in nature. And when I say baneful, I'm talking like decidedly so. These are curses. These are not new curses. These are curses that have been around for a while. These are curses that have been worked effectively by a number of witches. And when I say they have been worked, I mean they work. Okay. The results of any spell are always, of course, never guaranteed. And sometimes the results of a spell can materialize in ways that we didn't quite expect them to. Okay, but these two workings are uh these are pretty malicious workings. So save these for people who really, really deserve that kind of energy. Okay. All right. First one I want to talk about is a potato curse. Okay, and some of you might be familiar with potato spells. It's funny, a lot of people, particularly people who kind of dig more into folk magic, are more commonly they're more familiar with potato spells. And potatoes are magical items that can be used for a lot of things, lots of different kinds of magic. But this one is in particular, this is a curse. Um, the potato curse that we're going to go over is one that is actually really effective for um, workings against people who have wronged you in some capacity, people who have worked against you, they have harmed you in some way, and the depth of that harm is just such that like there's just no way to forgive this. There just is no way to forgive this. Okay, and this is a curse that is known to bring a lot of suffering. This is a curse that is, in essence, known to create almost like a rotting kind of an effect within the life of the person that is used against, right? So, depending on how you work it and how you focus it, that could be like a rotting or kind of a withering or decaying effect on their health, their finances, their relationship. It could be really any of a number of things, depending on kind of what you chose to target. Okay. This is a curse that can be utilized on more than one person at a time. You can use this in a way that, say, you could target this on, say, like a group of people, like an organization of people, or say maybe an administration of people that were leading like a larger group of people, say like an administration of people that were leading maybe say something like a country, right? Just as an example, right? Just as an example. And anyway, but you could utilize this spell, and in that sense, the way that you would work this, because we need to be smart when we're targeting um, situations, when we're working malevolencies, or when we're working baneful magic against people, particularly people who have what would seem to be a lot of a lot of psychic or a lot of energetic protection coming from other followers, and do not believe for a moment, do not doubt, I should say, do not doubt for a moment that the people who are overseeing our country, the people who run our country, are our political leaders, all of them. I'm talking all of them. Doesn't matter which party, what affiliation, which branch of government. If they are someone who is in power in our country, okay, and this is going to sound maybe a little conspiracy theorist for some of you, maybe, okay, but I need you to give me the benefit of the doubt, okay? Do not doubt for a moment that our political leaders in this country and in many others, they absolutely have magical protection. They have witches and other magical practitioners working for them to keep them safe. And so we need to be mindful of that when we are working against these kinds of people potentially, because we have to not only target the person we need that spell to work, but we need to consider how to navigate around that barrier of protection, or how to potentially punch a hole through that barrier of protection, right? And a lot of people are like, well, that doesn't even seem like that would be possible. Like there are thousands and thousands, millions of Christians praying for this person's safety. And how is my little one little spell going to work? You might be surprised. You might be surprised, because if you are clever with how you strategize that spell and how you need it to take effect, that spell will find a hole. We'll find a hole through all of that prayer. We'll find a hole through all of that other magical work that is working to protect that individual. So do not doubt your power. Do not doubt your skill. Beyond that, if a lot of us magical practitioners out there, if all the witches and the brujas and the folk magicians and the sorcerers and the warlocks and the whatever the fuck else they call themselves, if all of us could get over our own fucking egos for 5 minutes. If all the people who own metaphysical shops could stop fighting over capitalist bullshit, and who's making more money per day in their stores. If we could all get over these arguments over whose coven is more powerful and who knows more and who's more popular within the community and whose book sold more copies, right? If we could all get past that shit and we could all align ourselves behind one cause, right? And I'm not even talking spell work at this point. I'm talking like maybe just even just greater legal recognition for what we do as spiritual practice, right? Like if we could do that, we may not find ourselves having the moments that we're having right now with this latest political development in the US, right? Something to consider. I'm not saying any of you, because you Saltines, you're all lovely people, and I know that you would never ever stir any kind of trouble or drama within your small areas of the metaphysical community. I know that that would never ever happen for any of you, but we see a lot of that nonsense here, and it's very unfortunate, and it's hard sometimes not to get caught up in that. We've talked on the podcast before about how we try to be good neighbors, and I'm gonna tell you right now, there are days where it's really hard. It is really hard to continue to put a smile on your face and to try to do the right thing and to try to just continue to just be above board and ethical and to be a good person when you are surrounded by people who are just rooting for your downfall and deliberately lying on you. And it's very disheartening, and it gets very difficult some days not to just get down into the muck with all the other people and start slinging mud. But we try to be better. Anyway, back to this working, okay? When you are focusing on a target or targeting a group of people, I should say, right? In doing that, rather than making the focus of this working, the target of this working one individual, instead you would maybe structure this around creating again like a source of decay or withering or rot kind of within the heart of the organization itself, right? In doing that, what you're in essence kind of what you're creating, right, is you're giving the energy of the spell itself and the other magical allies that you potentially have called on. You're giving the energy of the spell itself the ability to really, to be honest, to kind of go after like the lowest common denominator, or to on its own kind of seek the weakest link in that situation, which is kind of nice because sometimes if you can take out that weak link, right, that can sometimes that can lead to a domino effect, and then you see that there's a whole lot of chaos and struggle within the organization, and anything at this point that we can do that is going to create any kind of delay, any kind of struggle, any kind of infighting is going to be a good thing, right? Anyway, all right, this spell. Okay, so here are some correspondences to consider. Okay, all y'all people with your intent is all you need to pay attention to this because intent is not all you need. Your intent is your car, but your correspondences, your addition, your items that you add to your working, the time of day you add to your working, those other things that you factor into your spells, your intent is your car. All that other stuff is the gas that you need to put into that car to be able to actually get to where you want to go. Okay, so no, 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 no. Intent is all you need. No, 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 no. Throw that mindset, throw that thinking away. Bullshit. Okay. Correspondences to consider. You'll probably want to do this on a Saturday. Does anybody want to guess why? I ask as if you can answer, right? Saturday is the day, of course, influenced by Saturn. Saturn is a day that is excellent for containment, holding, and limitation. Okay. By extension, Saturn is also a very good day for baneful work, just in general. Okay. You'll want to do this spell at night in a lot of traditions, nighttime after the sun has set. Really, anytime after the sun has set is kind of seen as the ideal time to do baneful magic. And that has a lot to do with the belief that the light of the sun is a positive influence. So we don't want to do our magical work, excuse me, our baneful magical work under the light of the sun, right? Because then we're potentially risking that the sun could, we don't want a little bit of sunshine in there, right? Like, ew, no sunshine in there, right? No positive for this person, right? No positive in this spell, right? This is a baneful working, right? Okay. This is not a must, but if you can factor this in, do this on either a waning or a dark moon cycle. Okay, again, the waning moon is again just a good lunar cycle for any kind of baneful work that would have to do with reducing something, wasting away, taking away, right? And again, that is really kind of the focus of this working is to waste away, to rot, to decay, right? And to diminish in that way, right? Okay, so the items that you will need, okay, a larger mason jar, okay, and really all you really need, just to make that clear, is you need a mason jar that will fit the potato that you're going to get, right? If you go to the store and you get like a tiny little like round like little potato, then you don't need a great big mason jar, right? But you need a mason jar that's going to be big enough to accommodate the potato that you buy and some of your other additives, okay? Because you are putting other things in the jar. Okay. Those of you who love your jar spells, yay, this is a jar spell, right? The way that jar spells ideally should be worked, okay, because this is a containment spell. Jar spells are typically they're meant to contain. They traditionally were used to contain things. That is how you should work with jar spells. Jar spells should be used for spells where you are trying to contain something. Okay. That's what a jar does. It holds, right? Anyway. So, an appropriate size mason jar, okay, with a lid, like one of those good lids that will seal, okay, because the stuff that you're going to put in this jar, once it starts to rot, that jar is going to be under pressure. Okay, you do not want that lid to pop off. You do not want, oof, it could be bad. Okay, so get a good, like a good canning lid, okay, on a mason jar. Okay, um, okay, and I used the last time I did this spell, I actually got like a big like a 32-ounce mason jar, which was way bigger than I needed. I did not need a jar that large. But I ended up going to the grocery store and the potato that I bought for this working the last time I did it was a kind of a larger potato, mainly because I had a lot of things that I wanted to do with the potato, and I'll explain that what I mean by that. In preparing the potato for the spell, I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. Okay. Okay, so you need a jar, a potato, okay, and just go get just a cheap white potato, okay. And you don't need a fancy potato. You don't get a sweet potato, okay. Just a plain white potato, okay. Um, just trust me on that. It's going to work so much better for this spell, okay. Yeah, okay. You need a sharp blade. Okay, this can be a ritual dagger. This can be if you have like a candle scribe that has a really fine point. This doesn't even need to be anything fancy. This could be just like a sharp kitchen knife. Okay, but you need something that you can use to cut and to carve into this potato. Okay, obviously whenever we're cutting, carving, etching it, anything, please be careful. You do not want to cut yourself. If you cut yourself while you're doing this and you get blood on that potato, you need to throw that potato away. You cannot use that potato. If you get any of your blood on that potato and then you put that potato in the jar, you are now in that jar. And this spell you could get a lick of the trouble in this spell. So please, please, please remember that. Okay. So you've got a sharp blade, vinegar, okay, just white vinegar. Please do not substitute apple cider vinegar or other types of vinegars, just plain white vinegar. Okay. Other vinegars very often have associations with healing, and we do not want to put that energy into this working. Plain white vinegar. Okay. Right? Anybody want to guess why vinegar? Again, I'm asking as if you can answer, right? Vinegar is something that is commonly added to things because it sours. When we add vinegar to things, it takes the sweet out of situations, it takes the joy out of situations, and it sours things. So it can be very good for a working like this where we want to sour something, right? Okay, all right. Whole milk. Okay, and you don't need a whole lot. Just go to maybe like the grocery store, get like one of those little like even like one of those like little kitty like those little kitty what do you call them, like little pint. So it's like just milk. You'll need enough. Just to be clear, you'll need enough to roughly to kind of fill the jar. You're gonna basically fill the jar with a combination. After you've got your potato in there, you're gonna fill the jar with um your with a combination of the vinegar and the milk. Okay. And then the final ingredient, okay, is optional if you want to. Okay, but the final ingredient, okay, is going to be just a tiny little bit of, well, I like to use, if you have animals, this is always going to be best, but shit, basically. If you're a witch like me, that has cats in the house, go grab a piece of cat shit out of your litter box because it works real well. If you're someone that doesn't have animals, excuse me, if you're someone that doesn't have animals, uh, but you want to throw that extra ingredient in there, talk to your friends, right? I know, unless they know you're witchy, right? But most of us have witchy friends if we're witches, right? Talk to your friends, let them know it's like, hey, you got a pet cat, and I'm kind of a little embarrassed to ask maybe, but hey, can I come over to your house and like sift through your litter box because I need I need a forbidden kitty Tootsie Roll for a working that I need to do, right? It doesn't have to be cat. It could be dog. You could, God, I in past years before I had animals, like I would go to like dog parks. And this sounds really gross, I understand, but I would go to dog parks, and there are a lot of people that will take their dogs to parks and then not clean up their dog shit. And I would go with like little doggy poop scoop bags, and I would see somebody that would like their dog would shit, they wouldn't clean it up. I'd just go and I'd grab a little bit of that in a dog poop bag and take that, and I'd use that as a spell additive, right? Witchcraft, particularly like guerrilla witchcraft, where you're kind of doing it like down and dirty, just need to get this job done, can be just that. It can be down and dirty. Right? Witchcraft is not always supposed to be glamorous and pretty. And any witch that tells you that witchcraft is always going to be glamorous and pretty is trying to sell you something. Okay. Anyway, but that final ingredient is an option. Okay. You don't need to worry about that. Okay. That's a good extra though, because it'll kick the kind of the rotting process off in that jar. It'll kick it off like a lot quicker. Yeah. Okay. All right. So to begin the spell, you're going to prepare your workspace, right? That's going to be your altar or whatever your workspace is, right, for your spell work. Right. If you're doing this for like the first time, actually, I'm going to say right now, if this is your first working, I'm going to suggest that you maybe not do this as your first working. Okay. Or if you're like, no, no, I've got to do this. I'm determined. I need to do this. Then try to find a witch buddy maybe to do this with you. Okay. Somebody who is okay with baneful work, because if you've got a witch buddy that's like one of these law of return, rule of three ninnies, they're gonna, they're gonna ruin this for you. They're gonna sap your energy and your will to do this properly. So don't get those kinds of people involved. Okay. They don't know what they're talking about for one thing. For another thing, they're gonna ruin this spell for you. Okay. But try to find somebody maybe who's able to kind of help you through this, mainly because they're ideally going to be able to give you some information on how to kind of raise the power that you need to, because that's the next step. You want to prepare a workspace, right? Just a flat space where you've got all your ingredients, right? And you're able to kind of sit and focus on what you're doing for a few moments, right? And then you need to raise your power. Right, and there are a number of ways to raise power, right? I know witches that are like they'll turn on like some music and they'll get up and they'll kind of dance around in that room, and like they raise their body energy or temperature, right? And they're breathing heavy and their heart rate is increased, right? And then they sit down and they kind of focus that heat and that energy into what they're doing, right? And they let that emotion build, right? And for this one, for baneful workings, you need to let your emotion build. You should let your emotion build for any kind of spell, right? I know there are a lot of people out there that are like, oh, well, you should never work spells in anger, or you should never utilize spells, or you should never put uncontrolled emotion into. And I to that all I can say is that's bullshit. Emotion is a vital power source. It always has been. And anything, your emotion, it could be anger that you channel into a baneful working. It could be love and joy that you channel into a healing working, right? Emotion is a vital source of power for us as magical practitioners. So for this working, as you are raising power, I want you to think about the moment. I want you to think about the issue. I want you to think about whatever it is, that sense of betrayal, that hurt, that thing this person did, that they betrayed you, that rage, that anger in you. I want you to think on that, and I want you to let that emotion build in you. And I want you to use that energy to allow that to build. And as you are working on your spell, and as you are preparing the potato, as you are adding your ingredients to the jar, every time you touch one of those things, you're pushing that emotion, you're pushing that power into those items. You are channeling it through your hands, you're channeling it out with your breath. You are releasing into the spell, right? And it's a really effective way not only to charge your spell, but you'd be surprised at the end of that working how good you can feel, how cathartic, how healing a moment like that can be, because you're like, I got it out, right? Like at least a little bit of it. I was able to purge. I got some of it out, right? Baneful magic can be very healing, right? So I want you to raise your power, right? And I want you to raise that emotion, right? Okay. And when you feel that you're kind of ready, when you feel that emotion and that energy, that power is ready to go, I want you to pick up your blade. I want you to pick up that sharp blade or whatever it is you're using to carve or to etch, right? And I want you to also grab the potato. Okay. And on that potato, right? And you haven't done anything, it's just a potato. It still has its skin on, right? Okay. You're gonna carve into that potato. You're gonna carve the name or names of the targets of this working, right? And you can add other things too. You can add words that for you spell out like destruction for this person. You can put sentences and things in there that are like, this is what's going to happen to you, right? This is, you can do sigils on there that are sigils that you are familiar with or things that sigils you've created, ideally, sigils you've created for this working, right? Because they'll work better if they're things you've created just for this working, they'll be more powerful. Okay, but you can put all of that into the skin of this potato. Just carve it in there. And remember, it doesn't need to be pretty. It doesn't need to be pretty. It's just a way for you to get more power into. It's just a way for you to create greater focus. That's all. That's all it is. Okay. Don't be worried. I know some of us are like, oh God, it's got to be perfect or it's not going to be real magic. And it's like, no, no, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Remember, in a few days, that potato isn't even going to look like a potato anymore. Right. So carve that into the potato, right? And as you do it, repeat what you're carving. Say it out loud. Say it out loud, like almost like that person's in the room. Talk to them, like you did this to me, motherfucker, and I'm gonna right and feel that, feel that, right? That's part of the working, right? You need to allow yourself that moment, right? If you're somebody who has a difficult time or struggles with expressing in that way, again, you're going to be surprised at how good it can feel for you just to let yourself go in that way, even in the process of just doing this spell. Okay. It's important. Okay? It's a way for you to reclaim some power. You're reclaiming power. Okay. All right. Okay. So when you've cut away, right, all that you need to, right, you got all that, right, you're going to put down your blade, right? And you've already said everything that you need to do while you're carving, right? At that point, there's a moment for you to like you say anything else that you want to say, right? Okay. And then you release any kind of final anger, anything else that you want to put into that, right? Because that potato is now your focus, right? For your spell, right? Okay. All right. And and then you put your potato in the jar, right? Put your potato in the empty mason jar, right? Okay. Okay. And really quick, I know some of y'all have this idea that like you need to prepare your jars ritually. Like I see people online with their jar spells where they're like, I need to burn incense in the jar. You don't need to do that for this shit. Okay. This is a baneful working. To be honest, you don't need to do that for any spell. Okay. That glass jar is neutral. That glass jar, particularly if it's a new one, is neutral. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. People who do that, I think, are very cute. That's a very cute thing. You don't need to do that. Okay. Glass is a neutral thing. That's one of the reasons why we're always telling people use glass instead of plastic, because glass overall is a relatively neutral material. Okay. Um, but you definitely don't need to do it for this because this is a baneful working. Even if there were funky energy in that jar, it's okay. You leave it there, right? So, all right. So you put your potato in the jar, right? Okay. You're gonna add your vinegar. Okay. Slowly pour the vinegar over the potato, right? And you want to fill that jar probably about halfway, okay, with vinegar, with that white vinegar. Okay. Okay. And as you do that, you want to kind of conjure, you want to kind of bring to mind an image of the targets of your work. And basically, what you're visualizing is you're visualizing their life, the circumstances around them, like everything that they want, all their goals, everything that they're working for is all of a sudden like everything around them is just miserable and bitter. Like that's all they know is just misery and bitterness, to the extent that anything that they're trying to achieve, like everything just kind of just falls apart around them, right? And they're powerless. So it's like they're crushed under the weight of their own misery and bitterness, right? Okay. And they don't deserve any better than that because of all the hurt that they cause others, right? Okay. Next, okay, you're going to add your milk. You put your vinegar down, you're going to add your milk. So now you're slowly kind of pouring your milk in there, right? And you're going to pour your milk in there like almost nearly to the top of that jar, right? Maybe just leave a little bit of room in there, right? Okay, ideally you want to pretty much kind of cover that whole potato in there though, okay? Excuse me, right? The milk, as it hits the vinegar, you might notice it almost starts to very quickly have almost like a curdling kind of effect. The kind of the pH of the vinegar once it hits the milk, like sometimes it can like it'll start to curdle a little bit, or it has not a curdle necessarily, but almost like there could be a chemical reaction. Don't worry about it. Like that's supposed to happen. Anyway. If it doesn't, then that's okay too. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong, right? Anyway, so okay, but you're gonna notice or once you've got all that in there, okay, um, your liquid's in there. Okay, now if you've chosen to, now you can put your cat shit, dog shit, whatever, in there too, right? I mean, that's what you saved a little bit of room, right? So add that in there, right? Okay. And obviously, make sure you're not getting any of this on yourself, right? Because it gross, right? Anyway, now seal the jar tightly, right? Make sure after all your stuff is in there, you've got that lid on super tight, super tight. Okay. Um, Okay, and once you've done all of this, okay, there is a small incantation. And the incantation for this working is actually really cute because it's in essence, it's kind of just a take off of like a children's nursery rhyme or like a I think of the rhyme from a game, right? Does anybody ever play hot potato as a kid? Right. So the incantation for this one, okay, once you've got all your stuff in that jar and it's sealed, you're gonna take that jar. Okay. And you're going to give it a good shake. You're going to shake that jar, shake that jar, shake it. Right. You can see now this is why you wanted a good tight seal on that lid, right? Because well, you could have a hell of a mess, right? If that lid comes off or that glass breaks, right? So you're going to shake that really, really, right? And as you're shaking that, okay, and write this down somewhere so you can read this off, right? You don't need to try to memorize this, okay? Right. But as you're shaking it, you're going to say one potato, two potato, three potato, four. You pissed off the wrong witch, and now you'll breathe no more. Five potato, six potato, seven potato, eight. Bound, drowned, and underground. I have sealed your fate. Okay, so once more. One potato, two potato, three potato, four. You pissed off the wrong witch, and now you'll breathe no more. Five potato, six potato, seven potato, eight. Bound, drowned, and underground. I have sealed your fate. Okay, and you can say that as many times as you want as you shake that jar. Just shake the shit out of that jar. And you're saying those words and you're allowing that emotion to flow, right? And you're visualizing these people just absolute just downfall and ruin for these people, right? Okay. And when you're done with that, okay, you're going to tuck that jar somewhere where the sun cannot touch it. Remember what I said a few moments back, right, about the sun kind of being a positive influence? We don't want the sun to touch that jar, right? And you're going to hold on to that jar for a couple of days. Okay. And I mention that or I say that because it could be nice for you to go back maybe a couple of days after you've done this, or for a couple of days after you've done this spell, to go back and maybe give that jar another shake. I like to do that when I do jar spells, and actually that's kind of how you're supposed to work a jar spell. A lot of people aren't familiar with that, but when you do a jar spell, more often than not, as you're doing those traditionally, you're not just supposed to set it up and set it on the shelf and leave it. You're supposed to go back and pick that thing up and give it a good shake and continue to talk to it and continue to feed it energy and continue to burn candles to it and things, and a lot of people don't do that. And then they're like, oh, my jar spells don't work. And it's like, well, are you doing them properly? So so for a couple of days after you initially put this together, right? You do this on a Saturday night. So say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right? However long, right? Okay. You go back even just for just a minute. You pick that up, shake the hell out of that jar, repeat that incantation again, think that all that, oh, this is what's going to happen to you, right? And then just set that thing back, right? Okay. Now, after a few days, okay, and you decide when, okay, after a few days, okay, but ideally before a week has passed. Okay. Don't wait longer than a week. Okay. Take this jar to a graveyard. Okay. Well, this is traditionally how this would happen. Okay. You would take this to a graveyard at night and you would bury this jar upside down, lid down. You would bury this jar upside down. Okay. You just put this in the ground. Okay. And when I say take it to a graveyard and bury it, I'm not talking like do not dig into a grave. Okay. That is so disrespectful to the spirits and to the dead in that space. Okay. Like just anywhere on the periphery of the graveyard is fine. Okay. And it's really easy to do this. A lot of people don't realize, but you can go in and you can peel a thing of sod back to expose bare dirt and just dig a hole, right? And you put that bottle, that jar in there and fill some of the dirt back in and just flip the sod back over and step that down, right, with your feet. No one will even know that that's there, right? Okay, so traditionally, you take it to a graveyard, you bury that jar upside down. Okay, if a graveyard is not an option, okay, it's okay for you to find other options, okay? But you do need to bury this jar. You need to bury this jar upside down, okay? And you need to bury it somewhere where it will not be disturbed, okay? For a couple of reasons. One, you don't want your spell to fizzle, right? If somebody disturbs this jar, your spell's dead. Spell's ruined, right? Okay, for another reason, if this jar is disturbed, that glass breaks, that lid somehow comes undone, what is in that jar, once it starts to really rot, that is going to smell so bad. Smell so bad. You are not going to want that anywhere near where you are living. Okay. So even if you do decide to bury this somewhere, like if you have land or property around, like you've got home or a yard, whatever, and you just choose like, okay, I'm just going to bury this, fine, but like bury it in like a far corner, like bury that like as far away from your house as you can get it. Okay. And hopefully you don't have big dogs that like to dig. Okay. Because you could end up with a problem. Right. Anyway, that is one of the workings I wanted to go over today and share. Okay. So, and I don't think I went through that too quickly, but I also understand there was a good deal of information there. So, maybe you might need to rewind this a few times to get that working, right? To get that spell. Okay. I would print this or add a link to this somewhere on this episode, but again, I don't want to be seen to be just, shouting baneful magic all over the internet. Although I realize that's, in essence, that's absolutely what I'm doing. All right. Let's talk about another one, okay? And I am going to say, like, I am going to provide a good spell in here today too, okay? Because it isn't all just about going on the offensive, right? Like, we need to also be doing some defensive work right now, okay? But let's do another one, okay? Because I think right now a lot of people are, when you go to war, right? And I know that a lot of people are like, "Oh, war? Oh God, why'd you have to use that word?" Right? But in essence, that's kind of what a lot of us are anticipating over the next 4 years, right? And it may not be a war fought with guns and bombs, and God will hope not, right? But in essence, it is going to be a state of conflict, right? There are very strongly opposing views and groups of people now who are extremely opposed in the way that they want to see things operated, in the way that they think the world and the country should work, in the way that they think people should live their lives and who people should be allowed to be, and so because of the energy of conflict, I feel comfortable using the word war. You know, so you can process that however you need to. You that can be whatever that means to you. But when we're going into a situation of conflict, nobody's winning a situation like that. Nobody goes into conflict. Nobody goes into a war situation where your enemy is coming at you with guns and swords and other weapons. You're not going to win that fight if you go into that situation with an armful of flowers proclaiming peace. You're just going to get shot down. You're just going to get run through. You're going to get trampled. And I think because of that, it's important for us, while we certainly need to make sure we are focusing on defense and healing and nurturing and support for our communities and for people who are targeted most by these awful people, right? We also need to make sure that we have some tools in our tool belt that we can utilize for offensive work, right? If somebody attacks us, we are absolutely within our right to attack back. Okay. So this next one is called the Widow's Web. Okay. It is another curse. And again, it is another particularly malicious curse. Okay. This is one that is more commonly used against people who are known liars, and they delight in using their lies and misinformation to create harm, to stir harm and to create trouble in the lives of in the lives of people around them. And I think that we're dealing with a very real situation here with that, right? We've got somebody who is now going to be or has been elected to be the president of our country, who we know is a liar, and the people around him are also liars and political pundits, and people who love to spin things, right, to support their personal agendas, right, even though they know a lot of what they have to say is bullshit, right? So we're dealing with a lot of lies, and this again, this curse just seemed particularly appropriate to me. So here's another one for you to maybe add to your grimoire. Okay. All right, the Widow's Web curse. Okay, your correspondences and alignments. You'll want to do this on either a Monday or a Saturday. You want to again do this at night, right? Baneful magic, we do at night. Okay. And again, you want to do this on either a waning or dark moon phase. Okay, the items that you need for this, okay, a small tag lock or an item that will represent the target of your working. Okay. For this working, I mean, that could be something as simple as just like a picture of someone, whoever it is that you ultimately are trying to target, right? It could be, well, we won't name any names, but I think you're all at this point pretty clear on who the hell it is I've been talking about this whole episode. You'll need, in addition to a tag lock or a witness item, you'll need a black button thread. Okay. Doesn't have to be button thread necessarily. Any kind of like smaller, like fine cord or thread would probably work. Okay. You'll need a sharp needle, right? That's why you probably really maybe want to go with thread or even maybe like embroidery floss. Okay. A sharp needle, right? And a black candle. Okay. So you'll gather your supplies, right? And you're going to sit for this one, you're going to kind of sit silently for a moment and you're going to focus your intent, right? You need to kind of gather yourself. Okay. And you'll need to make sure, as we talked about in the last spell, that in the process, like you want to raise some power, you need to raise some power for this, right? In addition to your intent, the items that you need to do the working, you need to raise power. Okay. Every device, think of your spells as magical devices, right? You need a battery in that device for it to work, and that's the power that you raise, right? So, you'll want to cut a length of the thread. Okay, this will be a representation of your web. Okay, and this can be as long as you want. Okay, but you don't need to go super crazy, but obviously a good measure of thread, I would say, like at least a yard, like a good 3 feet at a minimum, right? So you've got something to work with. Okay, all right. From there, you're going to light your black candle. Okay. And as the flame of the candle grows, um, take the thread that you've cut and weave the thread kind of through your fingers. Like those of you who maybe who are old enough to ever remember kind of playing cat's cradle, right? It doesn't need to be quite like that, but kind of let that thread kind of run through your fingers, right? Kind of let it run through your fingers. The idea is almost kind of like you're weaving, right? The idea is kind of like you're running that thread almost in the way that we would maybe envision like a female spider, kind of like weaving or working with the threads of her web, right? This is a widow's web curse, right? Okay. So, right, allow your hands to kind of hover between your eye line and the candle, right? So you can kind of see the thread moving between your fingers and your hands as they're moving, right? Okay. And as the thread moves around your hands, okay, again, remember this becomes not only the spider's web, but the web of your spell. It represents not only the spider's web, but the web of your spell. Okay. And the binding energy that is ultimately going to hold your target for this spell, right? Okay, so right, this is spell, just so you are aware, you don't need to do this necessarily. Okay, but if you are someone who, like me, who likes to work with Hecate, right? She is a goddess of witchcraft, so she's always an excellent ally for workings like this. Okay, now is a good time if you choose to call to one of Hecate's epithets, to call to Hecate under the epithet of Archaea. Okay, so you can call to Hecate under the epithet of Archaea, and a very easy way to do that is basically just to say very simply, I call to Hecate Archaea, the spinner of webs and the one who binds. I ask you to bear witness to my work and to add your strength to it if it is your will to do so, right? When we ask our gods to lend their strength to our spells, we always want to make sure that we honor them, that we honor their free will to do so, right? We don't command our gods. Okay. I mean, you can try, but you're wasting your time. Okay, trying to command a god to help you is you're wasting your time. Okay. Anyway, so we can do that very briefly if we choose to. If you are familiar with any other deities that you work with that you know are really effective in their power for working like this, call to them instead. That's okay. Doesn't need to be Hecate, right? Although I will say, given the current situation that we're dealing with, and ideally why I'm sharing this spell with you, the situations that I would hope that you would utilize this spell in, at least at present, I would say a red goddess, a darker divine feminine energy would probably be more ideal for you to call upon right now. Okay. Those of you that are like, hey, I'm going to call upon Thor. I'm going to tell you now, probably not. Thor, for one thing, is like the embodiment of patriarchal energy and war, male war, And and also not a god that is associated with magic, baneful magic in particular. So do give that some thought. Okay. Anyway, all right. So you've raised your power, right? You've got your thread, your mechanism of binding, right? And you've done maybe some additional invocation to a spirit to help you, right? So now you're raising power, right? And you're now moving that energy, the power that you've raised into the cord, into the thread, right? Okay, so now you're going to take one hand, right? You're going to free one hand. Doesn't matter, right, left, doesn't matter, right? And you're going to pick up your tag lock, the item that represents the victim, that represents your target, right? Okay, you're going to pick that up and you're going to start to bind that tag lock. And it could be anything. It could be a picture of this person. It could be a poppet that you've prepared to represent this person. It could be a piece of their clothing. In this situation, you probably don't have a piece of this person's clothing, but it could be anything. It could be, God, you can go into almost any place now and find fucking Trump memorabilia, right? Go and pick up a something and use that as a fucking visual focus for your spell. God knows. Anyway, but you're binding now your cord around this, right? And as you're doing this, right, I'm going pretty quick here, but you don't need to go quick, right? Like I'm not like reeling in a fish, right? Like you take your time, right? Take your time, right? Bind it like with intent, be deliberate, right? Okay. And as you're doing this, though, start your incantation. Okay. And the first part of the incantation, okay, it goes as such. Okay. Widow, widow, spin thy thread, weave tight the body, heart, and head. Okay. Right. And you can repeat that as many times as you want, right? Widow, widow, spin thy thread, weave tight the body, heart, and head. Okay. Widow, widow, spin thy thread, weave tight the body, heart, and head. Okay. All right. Tie that, right? Okay, as tightly as you can around that target and knot it. Okay, make sure you knot it because you don't want that thread to come loose, right? Okay, and you want to, as you're doing this, you want to realize that not only is that thread a representation of the spider, of the bind, right, going around this person, right? But that thread is also now a representation of your power, of your desire, your will to kind of basically to wrap around this person, right? And your hands, as you hold that item now, your hands now also kind of become in a sense kind of like the legs of the spider where you kind of like wrap around them, you hold them, you're grasping this now, right? Like this is your prey, right? It's kind of the idea, right? They cannot move or run from you. They're bound, they're held in place, right? You can do whatever you want with them now, right? Okay. They cannot run, they cannot move, they cannot speak, right? And they cannot see. They're powerless to work against you. Okay. Now, once you've done this, take up the needle, right? Sharp needle, right? And you're going to stab that item as many times as possible, right? As many times as possible, right? So I mean, seriously, like, God, go ham, go have fun. Seriously, like I've done this over the years where I've just done a quick like, kind of like spider mandibles, like, I've done this other times where I've been like just in a particularly foul mood and very angry with the person that I've done this on, and I've just like, I'm just like, I've lost count. I've lost count, you know. And again, obviously, don't hurt yourself, right? But have fun. Anyway, as you're jabbing that person, right? As you're jabbing that needle into that item that you've bound, right? You're gonna speak the next part of your incantation. Okay. And the next part of your incantation goes, pierce the flesh with poisoned bite. Free thy excuse me, I'm so sorry. Let me start over. Pierce thy flesh with poisoned bite. Free thy venom black as night. Okay, so as you're jabbing, pierce the flesh with poisoned bite. Free thy venom black as night. Pierce the flesh with poisoned bite. Free thy venom black as night. Pierce the flesh with poisoned bite. Free thy venom black as night. Right? Just however long you need to go, right? Okay, until you feel like, okay, I'm all stabbed out, right? Like I'm good. I'm good. Like I'm starting to I'm giving myself tennis elbow and carpal tunnel and TMJ all at the same time, right? Anyway, okay. When you're done, put your needle down, Okay. And hold your little victim up, right? Like you've got this little victim now, right? Okay. I like to tie mine just real quick. I like to tie mine so that I have kind of like a measure of the cord kind of hanging. So that like spiders sometimes do, like they'll kind of wrap their prey and then they'll kind of like hang their prey from a spot on the web, because they'll sometimes go back and they'll be like, oh, there's a little more juice in you. I'll come back and I'll finish you off later, right? So I'll sometimes leave an extra measure of cord, and then I will take this until I'm ready to really finish that spell. I'll take that and I'll actually sometimes tie these little spell targets to like nails and hooks in a pantry in my basement where the sun will never touch them. Um, and then when I've decided, okay, I've tortured you enough, I've seen your life crumble enough, I feel you have learned your lesson, if they are capable of learning. Um, then I will go and I will take that spell apart and I will give them a chance to maybe try to be a better person. So if you want to, you can absolutely do that, but you don't need to. Okay. You do want to, once you've got this all done, once you've got this all prepared, okay, you'll want to take this, okay, before you do anything else with it, right? You've got all you've jabbed it, you've done all this, right? Okay, you've got this powerless little prey there, right? Okay, place this next to the burning candle. Okay. And just leave it there for just a few moments. And I want you to go outside and I want you to ground your energy. Okay. Um, and grounding can be done in a number of ways, okay? And I say go outside, but like right now it's getting kind of chilly, so you don't really need to go outside, I guess, but maybe like go into another room just so you can kind of break away from the working, right? And ground, okay? Go through a process of grounding, okay? Allow the black candle that you've used to burn down completely, okay? You don't want to use that candle for another working. You've associated that candle now with this curse, so you don't want to use that candle for another working. Okay, so allow it to burn down completely. For this spell, I would recommend maybe you burn like a black chime candle, or maybe get like a black votive candle, just so you don't end up having to sit and wait for like a candle that's going to take 20 hours to burn down, right? Anyway, all right. So when you're done, as I mentioned a moment ago, I like to kind of take mine and hang them, but whether you do that or not, or whether you just put it away, right? So as you're tucking it away, as you're hiding it, and again, you want to put it somewhere where the sun cannot touch it. Okay. But as you do this, you're going to say the final bit of the incantation. And the final bit is, in webs malefic, thy prey lies hollow, drained of life, death soon to follow. So again, in webs malefic, thy prey lies hollow, drained of life, death soon to follow. Okay. And again, and you can leave that spell for as long as you need to. The purpose, or the way that this one works typically, is you watch. At this point, you've done your working, and then you watch the target. And so if you're utilizing this spell kind of for the situation that I'm hoping that you might, you're going to need to maybe pay attention to what's going on with the news. You're going to need to focus a bit on what is happening with government events and other things that are going on, and be looking for signs of basically of the downfall of this target, right? Yeah. Anyway, once you see a sign, once there's been some change to the circumstance, to the situation, and you're like, okay, all right, this dick got the consequences I was hoping that he would get, right? Then at that point you can dispose of, you can take apart the spell. And the easiest way to do that, to be honest, is just to take it back out from wherever you put it. And you can either set it out in the sun, you can unwind it and leave the components out in the sun for an hour or so before you just throw them into a dumpster, right? Or if you have access to a fire, like a fireplace, a chimney, like fire, you can just throw the whole thing into a fire. Fire is so good for transmuting energy and releasing things. So you can do that as well. Okay. So yeah. So hopefully this is maybe another one that you could try. Yeah. Okay. At the very least, something else to add to a grimoire if you keep one. Okay. All right. Final one I want to share. Okay. And I know I've been at this for a minute now. Um, Home protection. Okay. I know a lot of us are concerned right now about the safety of our families and our loved ones. Okay. So let's do a real quick one. No more baneful, no more baneful, right? Let's focus on maybe something a little more positive in nature, right? We talked about offense. Let's talk about some defense. Okay. So home protection spell. You're going to use this spell to keep your home, covenstead, or workplace. You can use this for your office as well, safe from just in general, just negativity, just harmful energies. We know right now that we're dealing with a situation where we have a lot of other people who have allied themselves with a rogue political party. And these are people who are, I think, without realizing it, because they are so caught up in fear and hatred and bigotry, they are sending a lot of really nasty energy out there at people of color, at immigrants, at LGBTQIA plus people. These are people that are sending a lot of really funky energy out there. And if you are somebody who was a part of those communities, not only are you already feeling badly about what's happened, but in the next 4 years, you're going to be feeling, I think, a lot of the psychic burden of that. You're going to be feeling, a lot of us, we're going to be feeling like the weight and the pressure, the sense of that, like just this psychic gunk that comes from all of that negativity directed at us by all of these bigots. So this is a really effective one, I think, for helping to combat that. Beyond that, it will help keep your home safe. Um, so for this spell, you're going to do this on a Sunday. You want to do this midday. Again, we're working with the power of the sun for this one, right? Okay. And though we're focusing primarily on sunlight for this one, I do want you to also still consider the phase of the moon. Ideally, you're going to do this on either a waxing, right? So as the moon is growing to full, or on a full moon phase. Okay. For this one's pretty simple. Okay. You'll need a black candle. Okay. And you'll need one, just to clarify, you'll need a black candle for everyone who participates. Okay. So if you've got, well, I mean that should be pretty clear, right? So everybody who's going to actually take part in this spell, okay, they're all going to need their own black candle. Okay. So again, this would be a good one to, like, maybe go pick up, like, just a handful of black chime candles, right? Give me just a second here. I just realized that I have a recipe I need to give you to go along with this spell. Let's see. I'm so sorry. Give me just a moment. I thought I was ready. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So yeah, so at the end, I will give you the recipe for the protection powder, okay, that is needed as a component of this working. Okay. All right. So because that's the other item that you'll need. You'll need a black candle for each person who participates, and you'll need a handful of protection powder. Okay. All right. So all who live or work in the space that's going to be where the spell is to be done. Okay. They all need to kind of gather, right? Okay. And you're going to want to start outside. Okay. You're going to want to start at the entryway to the building, right? So the main entrance. Okay. And I know a lot of us like have like homes where, like, like if you're like me, like very rarely do I use what is supposed to be the main entrance to my house. Like I always enter my house through the driveway or through the garage. So, but so use start at the main entrance of your home, like, or start at the entrance that you use most, what would actually be the main entrance based on what you use. Okay, doesn't have to actually be the front door of your space. Okay, start at the common entry point. Okay, the most common entry point. Okay, and again, start outside. Okay. All right. Now, everybody involved needs to take a moment to kind of gather their power. Once again, we want to gather our power, right? We need a battery in the device for it to work, right? Okay. And we're going to move in a clockwise direction. Okay. And we're going to move in kind of like a mill. A mill dance is something that you'll see really commonly practiced in a lot of folk and witchcraft, traditional folk and witchcraft practices will involve mill dancing. And there are different ways to do mill work, but typically a mill is kind of seen as like a slower, rhythmic kind of a pace, kind of a dance where you move around, kind of a circular kind of a pattern around. In ritual, it can be around a cauldron, it can be around an altar. In this instance, it's going to actually be around the property that you are protecting. Okay. So you're going to be working kind of or moving with other people kind of in a slow circle around the home, around the space that you are blessing, that you are protecting, right? And again, and you can do this slowly. You don't need to rush through this. Okay. Okay. And again, as you're doing this, with each step that you take as you kind of connect with the earth, bring your foot down heavily, like stomp, bring your feet down heavy, right? heavy, right? Heavy. Okay. The reason for that is that that is an insisting almost kind of like connection to the earth, right? Like I feel the weight, like I feel the foundation, like I build the foundation, like I create connection is kind of the idea, right? And as you're doing that, like breathe. Like and feel your breath rate increase. Like again, you're raising power, right? If you know of other ways to raise power, wonderful. Incorporate those. Okay. But that can be a really good way to do this. Okay. If you're someone like a lot of us where you're like you're in a house or you're in a building where there are like gates or fences or things, right? And you're like, I can't go all the way around. There's something in the way. Go as far as you can, right? And then stop, go around and start at that stopping point and then just continue in your circle clockwise. Okay. Don't you don't need to overthink it. Okay. You don't, it doesn't mean that you did it wrong or that it's not going to work. Just go around, start start where you need to, right? Or be maybe be more strategic and start on one side of that back fence, and then work all the way around to the other side that so you can get as much of a closed circle as possible, right? Again, you know what you're dealing with, right? I don't. So you work with what you have, right? Okay, trust me, it'll still work. It'll still work. Okay. All right. Okay. You're gonna move around the space. All right. Okay. When everyone feels like good, like you've made a good round, and you might need to make more than one. You might decide like, oh no, we made a pass. We got to do more than one. Right. Okay. But when everybody kind of feels like, okay, like we're in a good space, this actually feels pretty good, right? Okay. Then you can stop that milling. You can stop moving around. Okay. And then you light your candles. Okay. Right. And as you hold your candle, okay, and you want to kind of hold these a little bit at an angle, right? Because you don't want that hot wax running down your hands, right? Okay, as you hold your candles, feel the energy that you've raised coursing through your body. Okay, and as you do that, I want you to visualize, I want you to feel that energy moving, kind of gathering and moving up here, kind of from your head all the way up through your legs, your lower torso into the center of your chest, and then down, releasing it through your shoulders, your arms, pushing it down through your hands, right? And moving it into the candle. So the candle then becomes the receptacle for the power that you have raised. Okay. And once you have done that, then you're going to speak the following incantation. Okay. And this one's a little lengthy. Okay. All right. So I'll repeat this a couple of times. Okay. And again, you can rewind this so you can get it written down. All right. Okay. So the incantation is as such: guard this space and guard it well, that no evil shall befall those within these walls who dwell and work and teach and craft and spell. And any force sent our way by warlock, witch, or ghost will be added to our well and grow our power at their cost. Add to mine your voice and will, witches and spirits in this space. With purpose and prosperity, we ask the gods this place to bless. Okay, so I'm going to go through that one more time. Okay, so guard this space and guard it well, that no evil shall befall those within these walls who dwell and work and teach and craft and spell. And any force sent our way by warlock, witch, or ghost will be added to our well and grow our power at their cost. Add to mine your voice and will, witches and spirits in this space. With purpose and prosperity, we ask the gods this place to bless. Okay. All right. And as you say that, and you can write this down and have this on little bits of paper, right? You don't need to try to memorize this. Okay. You're not a bad witch for not being able to memorize incantation. Okay. You're okay. Right. Okay, so anyway, but as you say this, like you need to like you mean it. You need to mean it. Put power in these words, right? Put power in these words, right? You need to claim that space. You need to believe this, right? If you're somebody who's going to do this kind of spelling, you're going to be like, guard this space and guard it well, and let no evil. That is a wasted spell. That is a wasted spell. You have raised no power. There is no power in you, and the spirits that potentially around that space that you were asking to, no one's hearing you. No one's hearing you. That spell is not going to go anywhere. Okay. So you need to put some power in this. You need to put some hips and some belly. You need to put your chest into this, right? So power, power, power. Okay. Right. If you cannot put power into this to protect your home, your space, your family, right? What the hell can you put power in? Right? Okay. I'll quit yelling at you now. I'm sorry about that. Okay. All right. Okay. So you'll want to again, um, you've done this, right? You've done your incantation, right? Okay. And you've charged this. At that point, everyone can put out their candles. Okay, you can snuff your candles, right? And you can go inside. Okay. Once that's done, okay, once everybody's done, right? The last person to enter the home, the last person to cross the threshold needs to sprinkle protection powder across the threshold. Okay. So be strategic about that. Okay. Decide who's going to be the last person to cross that threshold when you guys all go back inside. Okay. Because that person needs to have that powder ready. Okay. They need to have that in their pocket and ready to go. Okay. All right. And I'm going to give you that recipe here in just a minute. Okay. All right. Let's see. Did I miss something here? I have this little fly friend buzzing here. I'm so sorry. Um, no, I think we should be good here. Yeah. Oh, the candles. Okay. Those candles, because you didn't really light those for very long. Okay. Um, Snuff those candles out, blow those candles out, tuck those away somewhere. Okay. Those candles, because of the association that they had with this protective working, if there is ever a moment where you find that the energy starts to feel a little bit funky in your house and you're like, oh, I think I need to re-up my spell, or I think I need to I want to do another spell for protection for my home or my family, use those candles. Get those candles back out and just relight those candles, even just one of them. Okay. Those candles already have a charge toward protection. Okay. And so by extension, they will already work. They will already have kind of more of an effective kind of an energy for that working. You can utilize them, right? Remember, we waste not, want not, right? We use everything, right? And we reuse as much as we can. Okay. All right. So that spell powder, let's see. Oh, where are you? Okay. All right. So that recipe for that spell powder. Okay. And this is pretty easy. Okay. All right. You'll need, well, I guess I shouldn't say it's pretty easy because there are a couple things here that are just a little exotic. Um, okay. Well, I shouldn't, they're not even exotic. Okay. So here's the recipe. Okay. So you need a tablespoon of rosemary, right? Ground rosemary. And when I say ground, I mean like you're grinding this down to a powder. Okay. Um, So you can either process this yourself, you can go to a metaphysical store that has an herbal apothecary, and you can ask them, so like, hey, could you process these herbs down for me? Right? If they most herbal apothecaries should have rosemary. If they don't have rosemary, then I honestly I don't know that. I'm just saying that's not a very good herbal apothecary. But most of them are probably willing to process herbs down to a powder for you if you're willing to give them the time. They may charge you a little bit of an extra fee for processing, so ask, right? Anyway, so you've got your powdered rosemary, a tablespoon of powdered rosemary, tablespoon of powdered nettle leaf. Nettle is also known as forest guardian. It's a very protective herb. Okay. You'll need 10 rose thorns. Okay, again, kind of crunched, not powdered necessarily, but kind of crunched up. Okay. Um, Added to this mix. Okay. This next bit, you kind of have to do this for yourself. Okay. You need to mix 3 drops of your blood in with all of those dry ingredients. Okay. And obviously you want to be careful with that, right? If you go to drugstores, you can get like the lancets that diabetics will use to draw blood for blood sugar testing. Those are always a better way to go, right? But if you're not squeamish, if you can find like a straight pin, something you can just kind of like I like to kind of go right here, kind of at the base of my thumb here, kind of like my Mount of Venus, just because I find the skin is a little bit thicker here. So if I like kind of just give myself a quick like it doesn't hurt quite as much, at least for me, I don't know that that would be true for everybody, but I don't know. But I don't like jabbing my fingers. Anyway, so but you need 3 drops of your blood. Okay, and you're gonna mix all this together, right? Okay, when I say your blood, okay, what that means is that needs to be the blood of the person who is ultimately taking responsibility for this spell. Okay, the person who is taking responsibility for the spell and somebody who can clearly say, like, yes, this is my house. This is my space. Okay. Um, it's funny, a lot of people, just as an aside, really quick, people will hire us to come and do house clearings for them. And we're always happy to do that work for people, right? Because a lot of people they don't know how, or they get nervous about doing that themselves, right? And it's funny because when we have conversations with people about that, we almost always tell people that, we're happy to come and do that for you because we know how, right? And we have ways and methods that we can make that work for you. But doing your own house clearing work is always going to be more powerful because it is actually your home. You're the one that actually holds dominion there, right? And so with that in mind, someone who actually can say like this is my house, right? And even if you're living in an apartment or like you're renting someplace, right? Or even if you're like doing this say like in a workspace, right? As long as you're paying the rent, as long as you are somebody who is working in that space, you can still lay claim to that space. Absolutely. Okay? So don't be nervous about that, okay? All right. So somebody trying to call me. Um, okay, so you're gonna mix all that up, and then when you step back into the house, this is the powder blend that needs to be sprinkled across the threshold. Okay. Once that's done, close the door, right? And everybody goes back inside, and you tuck away the remainder of those black candles, and you go on with your day, and that's it, right? Like not a whole lot of fuss, not a whole lot of cleanup with this one. Okay. Maybe do something to ground yourselves, right? But otherwise, you're good. So I wanted to get on and I wanted to share those just because I think that right now, sharing information and anything else that we can be doing to help empower all of you to kind of just empower all of you to be able to kind of handle what I think many of us are kind of anticipating is coming up is going to be a good thing. That's why we're here, is to educate and empower. And I've kept you on here probably longer than, as usual, longer than I meant to. So I'm going to shut up now and let you get on with your day. But I'm sure you'll probably be seeing us again in a few days. One of us will be back on here with some other information, something else to talk about. We will kind of get back to our regular format again, I hope, here in the next couple of weeks. Mia, the news of the election this week, the election results just hit Mia so hard. She was sick the last time, and then this time she was still sick, but I think this time it was heart sick, as I think a lot of us were. And so we just could not do our regular episode again this week. And so again, I apologize for that. But we will get back to a kind of our regular format. So you can look forward to again more astrological information and some additional info coming from Mia here soon, right? Yeah. And I'll be back with some more of the geomancy and some of the other stuff too, because I know a lot of you guys like the forecasts. So anyway, but I'll let you go for now. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Hopefully, some of the information that we went over today is helpful. Please like, subscribe, leave comments on this video. Please let me know if some of what we went over today was helpful. Share your feelings and your thoughts. And again, share your questions and your concerns with us. Let us know, right? We want to make sure as we continue to post information, particularly now, right, while we need to be kind of building each other up a bit more. Please talk with us. Please let us know what's going on. Let us know what you think, in the context of what we're doing and what we're sharing, so that we can continue to do our best work for you, right? Yeah, so you can do that here by leaving comments on any of our videos. You can also email topic suggestions and things to info@catandcauldron.com. Um, those of you who submitted prior topic suggestions, we will get to those. Okay. Just give us a little bit of time. Okay. We will still get to those. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Please take care of yourselves and please take care of each other. Okay. Thank you.